What first pops into your mind when you hear the word midlife? Crisis, yes. The dreaded midlife crisis is the butt of all kinds of jokes, but it's also a serious matter. After I lost a few friends to midlife suicide, I decided to create an alternative narrative to the awful way we tend to think of our 40s, 50s, and 60s. And I'm going to share that with you over the next 3 minutes. Midlife is one of 3 life stages that sprouted in the 20th century. Adolescence didn't even exist until 1904, when society realized that just because you hit puberty didn't mean you were an adult. Retirement was popularized nearly a century ago with pensions and Social Security, and then 25 years later with the advent of AARP. I hope you have your card. And retirement communities. Those 2 life stages got a whole lot of love. But there's a life stage in the middle that didn't get much respect. Midlife is the natural outgrowth of the 3 decades of additional longevity we were granted in the 20th century. But all it got was a bad brand, the midlife crisis, which was coined in 1965. Yet research on how happiness evolves as we age shows that from about age 22 or 23 all the way to 45 to 50, there is a long, slow decline in life satisfaction. It bottoms out around 45 to 50, although your mileage may vary. On the other side of that, though, the good news is that from age 50 on, we get happier and happier. It's called the U-curve of happiness. So maybe there's a new framework to think about midlife, one that we learned when we were kids, the magical metamorphosis of the caterpillar to the butterfly. Just as a caterpillar eats incessantly just before it's about to spin its chrysalis, so do we as young adults madly consume and produce. And then the caterpillar decides to take its midlife break in its chrysalis, which is dark and gooey and solitary, but it's also where the transformation happens. On the other side of that, there's a chrysalis that cracks open, and this beautiful winged creature emerges that delights us all, the butterfly. So to recap, the caterpillar consumes, the chrysalis transforms, and the butterfly pollinates. What if we rethought midlife such that it's not a crisis? It's a chrysalis, the midlife chrysalis. What if we thought of midlife as the dawning of a new age, an age where much of what we accumulated dissolves, just as we're ready to transform, spread our wings, and pollinate our wisdom to the world in our 50s and beyond? Yes. If you look at life like that, it's maybe possible that it's cool to grow old. Are we ready for pro-aging, not anti-aging products? Can we make aging aspirational? I sure hope so. Thank you.
How did Bach move throughout his life successfully, notwithstanding the demand from the world outside him? Here's how Bach started out. According to social psychologists, Bach started out using what's called fluid intelligence. Fluid intelligence is what we think of as raw cognitive horsepower, pure brains. It's problem solving, it's innovation, it's working memory. Here's the bad news: it decreases with age, and it decreases before we want it to. This is your processing speed, my friends. This is the magnitude, how much RAM you've got, and how big your computer is, and how fast it runs. That's your fluid intelligence. And Bach was pure fluid intelligence for the entire first half of his career, innovating like crazy, coming up with new ideas, fertile. At some point in the middle of his career, as a matter of fact, in the last 20 years, he went to another kind of intelligence, which is described by social psychologists as crystallized intelligence. If the first kind is your Sherlock Holmes brain, this is your Dalai Lama brain. This is your accumulated knowledge and experience. So fluid intelligence is a flow. Crystallized intelligence is a stock. Nobody ever says, you know what your virtue is? Brains. They say your virtue is your wisdom. This is the payoff to a good life. This is accumulated knowledge and experience, wisdom and judgment. It's crucially, this is teaching ability, what Bach was doing. And here's the best part of all. Here's the good news of the afternoon. It increases with age. Here's what it looks like in the data. This is a graph that's going to look at how fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence change over the lifespan from infancy all the way to late adulthood. And here's exactly what you'd expect. Fluid intelligence increases and then decreases. Crystallized intelligence comes on later and stays strong all the way to the end of your life. So what do? What are you going to do with this information? Don't try to keep relying on fluid intelligence as you grow into old age. As a matter of fact, even as you grow into middle age, start moving on from your fluid, your crystallized intelligence.
My name's Steve Jenkinson. I started off years ago in the death trade. I realized then this culture that I've been born into, it's beginning to die. Our way of life, it's never been less sustainable. Everybody knows. Well, sort of. And there's little old person wisdom, so much as there's just old people. Something's happened to old. I didn't set out to write something to correct that, because there's no correcting it. I wrote a book about elderhood. So what's someone my age, what's our responsibility? If you've achieved some kind of equanimity because you've sat in the desert cross-legged for years, just stay there. Don't come back. Self-improvement in a world in swoon is dereliction of duty. This is not the time for okay people being okay. What would an elder look like now? It's not a kind of person. It's a kind of doing. Like artists, elders first and foremost are a consequence of their time, an artifact of their time, and a redemption of their time. It's the skill of your heart being broken on schedule. And the schedule says, now.